Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? I haven't got a cup of tea today, but I've got a fly bothering me. How's everybody doing? Again, just a general chat about bits and pieces. Thank you all very much for the comments yesterday. I can't believe that I really thought I was like in a minority. I had no idea that a lot of you have clearly been thinking similar things for a long time, but just not saying it out loud or expressing it in any way. And I'm astonished actually how many of you feel the same. Anyway, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I see Harry has gone to the Warrior Games, the American equivalent of Invictus, and I'm pretty sure they existed before Invictus. He did Invictus, or his PR people probably thought, that's a good idea, let's do that, you know, back in the days when he had decent PR. So it's interesting that he went. Yes, he was smiling and putting on a brave face. I noticed the people sitting around him either didn't have a clue who he was or weren't particularly interested. The starlight seems to have gone to a large extent, doesn't it? Which is sad. And no madam with him. I prefer to call her madam. And I also see that Sarah Ferguson's made some comments, which I won't comment on, but just so you all know, yeah, I saw that. I distinctly remember her sticking up for Heather Mills years ago, but least said, soonest mended, I think. Because I do believe that people who encourage either of them are enabling them. They may think they're being kind, but I think they're just not being realistic and they're not seeing the situation for what it is and how catastrophic it is, quite frankly. I've had good friends in my life and also in my family, and we're very good with each other. When we think something's a bad idea, you know, I'm going to be a real friend and I'm going to tell you the truth. You need to stop doing this, or I wouldn't do that if I were you. That's what real friends do. They don't go, oh yeah, great, you know, go jump off that cliff. That's just not what a good friend does. But I'm not sure Sarah is paying attention or is with it or what. Anyway, so moving on from that, I was thinking about the Grand Duchess Anastasia. You know, there was always the mystery about was Anna Anderson her or not. And I distinctly remember a documentary I'm pretty sure it was back in the 90s. Prince Philip provided some DNA because he was the most closely related. And I know all the names, you know, Edward VII, Queen Alexandra, the Tsarina, Tsar Nicholas, and I know, you know, how they were nieces and nephews, and it all crosses over, and it's really complicated, and it's actually fascinating. It's one of the things I love doing, is going through Wikipedia and then going to the parents of some duke or duchess or something and following the family line. So I did follow the whole thing, and they proved that she wasn't. I don't know where they got her DNA from, but that's the conclusion. But during that documentary, very interesting, and I can't find it now, there was a man who said he was developing a new type of science where he would get two photographs and he would flick very quickly between the two different people to see if they were the same person. And what his computer software would focus on is the T off the face, the eyebrows and this bit, because he said no matter how people age, generally speaking, that doesn't change. And he did the flickering between Anna Anderson and Anastasia, and he drew the conclusion that they were one and the same person, which I thought was interesting. But then it turned out she wasn't, and that's not the point I'm making, whether she was or she wasn't. The point I'm making is that this guy was obviously very early days of facial recognition, which we're all pretty familiar with these days. And yes, facial recognition is pretty good, but it's not always, you know, spot on. So it's an evolving science, isn't it? And of course, human beings do vary greatly. You can't just have a one size fits all. This is never ever going to change, because it can change. Someone could break their nose. They might have surgery themselves. There are all kinds of things that can change. So I'm not entirely sure. I agree with the guy that people keep the same T features in the middle of the face from birth to death and old age. But it was interesting thinking about that and looking back on it. And I was thinking about that because I see people make comments about Harry's parentage, you know, who, James Hewitt, a lot of people say, and the reason I think they say that is because they both have red hair. But I don't know about any of you guys, I can see Charles in Harry so much if you take away the hair and the ears, and of course Harry's got a beard, so it's very hard to see features like that. But if you just take this bit, oh boy, you should be able to see it. I don't know how anybody can't see it. They've got the same, especially when they're angry, they've got the same hard brow, they've got the same piercing blue eyes, they've got the same eyelids. I mean, when they're happy, if you just look at the eyes, they're the same eyes. They're like a carbon copy. And when you see them angry, they're like a carbon copy. It's really interesting. They have very, very similar facial features. I just can't understand. I think it's a bit cruel, really. And of course, Diana, although she was blonde, she came from a family where they had redheads. Charles Spencer was always kind of, he wasn't a redhead exactly, but he had sandy coloured hair. He was in between red and blonde. He was definitely sandy coloured, and at least one of her sisters has red hair. I'm not sure if the other one had red hair. But so the gene is there in that side of the family. And it's just obvious to me. And it'd be interesting if somebody could do the thing between Charles and... Because Hewitt, I just don't see any resemblance at all. And Hewitt himself said that, and she didn't meet Hewitt until after Harry was born. So I'm not quite sure how that works anyway. But, yeah, all these royal mysteries. I think royal mysteries, like the Romanovs, you know, and Anastasia, did Anastasia survive or not? I think people like it because we like to believe that at least one of them survived. That's the truth of the matter. It softens the blow of the reality of the horrific story. But yes, with Anastasia, it was King Edward VII was the uncle of the Tsarina, and his wife, Queen Alexandra, was the aunt of the Tsar. They weren't related, but it's just pure coincidence that they happen to be auntie and uncle. And so that really confuses the story that you've got two Alexes. You've got Queen Alex and you've got Tsarina Alex, and they're different ages and different generations, and then you can follow it through from that. I did try doing it once on a whiteboard as a presentation. I think someone like Lady C would do a much better job, but to sort of show. And they go down in that case, they went down a female line. Now this is interesting. And I thought, you know, I wonder why with DNA things, they always go down the female line. I wonder if it's because you can be sure who the mother is, but not necessarily the father. So perhaps that's why they do it. Of course, as we may have learned in recent times, it may not always be conclusive going down the mother line, if you know what I mean. But I mean, that's all just super weird, and as I understand it, it's going to hit the press any day now. Let's see if it does. It's the impression I get, that things are coming out, and I mean, that's going to shock the knickers off planet Earth, isn't it? Won't shock anybody round here, but there are going to be people. Well, people will have all different reactions, won't they? I'm not sure the Windsors would like something like that themselves in the newspaper, because it will make some people question everybody, you know, Catherine, Diana, the Queen Mother, you know. So I'm not sure that, well, we'll have to wait and see what comes out about that. So this is just a general chat about parentage and lineage. and mysteries. There's lots of royal mysteries and legends and stuff to keep us all going for years. I love reading up on wiki pages. In fact, I think I will put a link to Queen Alex in the description here, who was phenomenally popular, very beautiful Danish princess who married one of our kings. She married him when he was the Prince of Wales, so she was the Princess of Wales back then, and she is one of my favourites. And there are loads of roads in the UK named after her, and cul-de-sacs and avenues, loads of them. She was popular like Diana, you know, very, very popular, but she lived to a great age. Anyway, so I would love to hear what you're up to today and what you make of all that. Do you think Anna Anderson was Anastasia? Or are you happy with the DNA result? Do you think the guy with the facial recognition had a point? I wish I could find that documentary. And what do you think about Harry? I'm just can't not see Charles in his face. As always, thank you very much for listening.